countless hours, countless discussion with multiple people, excessive testing on multiple high challenges, now sovereign people, just to bring you the best builds. Most of these builds are given to high elo players to just test them on every single role. The goal of this is to create the newest and best builds that are offering the highest chance of you and for you to carry most of your games. So let's just get right at it. First we have Tristana, and here we have a juicer build. All of you know Tristana as the super late game scaling, hyper range giga carry champion. But what about a build that allows you to have impact early on, especially on level 5? Your spells deal a lot of damage and have decent AD ratios. So what about items that give you a lot of AD and that are less than a full item? Yep, you have heard me right. Just start with a Gluttonous Grease into BF Sword. After this, you instantly complete Phantom Dancer. You don't complete Infinity Edge before that. After this, you finally complete Infinity Edge and then you go for Bloodthirster. In most of your games, it's not a question of dealing damage at all, like hitting the enemy and seeing good numbers. It's about survivability and being allowed to consistently deal damage without being completely poked out in an instant. Bloodthirster will help greatly with this, and after this, it's Lord Dominic's regards. With all this in your inventory, you'll finally complete your build with a Guardian Angel. Obviously, you can still go for a shield bow if you need the extra survivability. Even though you have more than 100% crit, it really doesn't matter, because the idea behind this is just getting tankier, and shield bow would help you greatly with this by adding even more vamp to your build. For your enchantments, it's as per usual for the 80 carry roll Stasis or Quicksilver. As for runes, you're a hyper carry that attacks often and has an attack speed steroid, so go for Lethal Tempo, into Brutal, Giant Slayer, Bloodline, and Overgrowth. On every single 80 carry in this game, you can also technically run Resolve as your first tree, and then Giant Slayer in your second tree. But it's very important that you run Overgrowth on most of your champions, especially if they're very farm heavy. You gain so high amounts of extra HP for literally free. And by running Overgrowth, you also enable yourself to go for Steric's Gauge as your last item compared to, for example, Shield Bow and Guardian Angel, simply for the fact that you have so much extra HP, which then translates into a bigger shield on your Steric's Gauge. Oh yeah, and with this build you have 75 AD on a simple 2,900 gold investment, which means on level 5, if the enemy team or the enemy champion you're jumping on doesn't have exhaust, he will instantly die. It's super easy and super powerful. The next build comes for a champion that has been overbuffed for no reason, and it's Lee Sin. So let me start this. Technically speaking, you have the ability to not go for boots as fast as possible, but just go for Youmuu's and then decide later on if you want defensive boots. But for this certain build, we'll go with Gluttonous Grease Rush. We also have decent Omnivamp in our build in terms of rather just more damage, and we have a lot of extra early game damage with these boots plus sustain. After this, it's obviously the Youmuu's Ghostblade into the Cleaver, then Steric's Gauge into a percentage pen item, and then Guardian Angel. If you need, you can also go for a Divine Sundra if you don't need the Guardian Angel, or go for a Divine Sundra in place of Steric's Gauge and go for Steric's Gauge a little bit later on. You can also get your percentage pen even later, or maybe even not at all, depending on how the game looks like. You don't always need it, but it greatly enhances your damage, but well, it's always a balancing act between surviving and dealing damage. As for your enchantments, Stasis and Quicksilver. For your runes, you want Conqueror and not First Strike, Sudden Impact, Mark of the Week, and Eyeball Collection. And for your second rune, you want to go for Giant Slayer. Some even might make an argument that you can go for Overgrowth, which I'll greatly support, but it really depends on what you're facing. Your champion really utilizes Sudden Impact really well and really wants to have that rune page, and Giant Slayer is so powerful as well. So for this champion, it might even be an angle where we don't go any Resolve rune, even though it hurts me actually. For our next champion, we have Darius, and here we start with a very interesting approach. Darius usually only has an issue with the gap closing. If he is close enough and has enough HP, he'll just kill you eventually. It's basically a race to 5 stacks. With this in mind, obviously having defensive boots as our first item makes us much more powerful. Defensive boots for a first item grant us more than 25 to up to 30% more effective HP on item purchase. That is crazy. For your second item, you want to go for Trinity Force for the attack speed and the Sheen bonus damage, then you go for Cleaver for even more haste, more HP, and more Armor Pen on top, because Darius' E passive is also Armor Pen. The next item right after this is going to be Steric's Gauge. We have a lot of extra HP with our items, decent haste, and are really tanky, so we want to be even more tanky afterwards. and as we transition into the late game, we obviously need more resistances, because so far we only have defensive boots. Amaranth Twin Guard comes in really clutch, and then it really depends on who you're facing. Do you need a Thorn Mail? Do you need something else like a Spirit Visage? It really depends on who you're facing. Maybe even a Force of Nature. And for enchantments, you can go for Protobelt, Quicksilver, and Stasis. It really depends on the game you're playing. For runes, you really want to look at the Phase Rush. This will allow you to reposition yourself in fights, as well as gain cooldowns back faster. It makes it really easy to also reach the backline, especially if you're running, for example, Flash Ghost, or just Protobelt. Other than this, your champion just needs to live to kill everyone. It's a race to 5 stacks, remember? And therefore we go for Nullifying Orb, Second Wind, Overgrowth, and then depending on what we're facing, maybe even Tenacity, but most of the time Giant Slayer, because it's such a disgustingly broken rune. And here's a secret most people don't know about. Do you know that if you kill a unit while having Cleaver, or for example Trinity Force, you gain a burst of movement speed? Normally it's also on hit, but killing something grants you even more movement speed. So with that in mind, using your first ability as you run after somebody, executing minions on your way will grant you a great benefit or great boost in movement, and therefore an easier way to get to the enemy. Next up to this comes Pantheon, the absolute bane of every solo queue player. Even more annoying than Lee Sin, because this champion one-shots you at every point of the game. It's sickening. For your boots, you can start with the Gluttonous Greaves or Armor Pen boots. Rush instantaneously into Yumu's Ghostblade. Then you have to make a decision if you want Cleaver or even Collector just for the flat pen. Really depends on what you need. Then we go for Lord Dominic's Regards for more crit and even more damage. After doing this, we have to make a decision. Do we want to be a one-tap bomber, or do we want to live a tiny bit longer? Some people would go for Infinity Edge into a Sense Reaver here, and other people would prefer going Starex into Guardian Angel. It really depends on what you want the most, but you'll one-shot regardless in most situations. Have you seen a Pantheon use second ability onto an enemy? Well, the enemy just goes sky instantly. And here's a little secret about Pantheon's second ability and Essence Reaver interaction. Only the first hit of your second ability will be empowered by a Sense Reaver, but since you're hitting so many times, a Sense Reaver will instantly be up again to empower your first ability, which means 2 abilities will be empowered instantly. Now keep in mind, the only way of killing your champion is killing him before he uses his third ability, and therefore having access to Stasis or even Quicksilver will greatly help you survive. And for runes, go for First Strike for even more damage in gold, Sudden Impact because your leap counts as a, well, leap, Mark of the Weak, Zombie Ward, and Giant Slayer. And your champion is crazy. On every ult level up, he gains more percentage armor pen, and he has such high damage numbers. This champion certainly is not balanced, and if played remotely well, is an absolute abomination on the Rift. And everybody would agree and will agree, because this champion is disgusting to play against. For the last champion, we have Orianna, the scaling queen, the relaxing champion that if she gets to scale, will take over games 90 billion times easier than any Kayle player could ever do, because Orianna actually is a champion. Anyway, let's get to items. For boots, she really wants Boots of Mana, and after this it's time for Luden's Echo. These 2 items will make her a very powerful presence at that point. Before this she is rather weak, but after this she only grows stronger every single second. Once you've completed Luden's Echo, you'll also go for Tear of the Goddess, which you'll slowly scale up. With that done, you'll go for Rabadon's Death Cap and or Void Stuff. These items will be your core, and after this, you'll complete the Archangel's Staff to have even more AP for the Rabadon's Death Cap, and then you go into Liandry's Torment. Your champion is still a very heavy poke mage with burst elements. And with all the AP you've gained from all your items, your Liandry's will tick like an absolute truck. And to make sure you survive, you go for Stasis or Quicksilver depending on what you're facing. For runes, we go for the gold acceleration build. We want to print money, and we need money desperately. And therefore we'll go for First Strike, Scorch, Mark of the Weak or Cheap Shot, and Zombie Ward or Eyeball Collector. It really depends on what you believe the game is going to look like, if you are going to kill more wards or more people, and then you go with the most consistent choice from your perspective. And obviously we go for Giant Slayer in our second tree. With the idea of scaling in mind, we can also invest into heavy resolve runes that if we believe we are going to get killed easily, we become way more tanky with the resolve first tree. We'd lose out on laning pressure, but we'd become so much more tanky depending on what we are facing. In order to utilize the Scourge and Cheap Shot build though in combination with First Strike, all you have to do is cast your first ability into your second ability and hit the enemy once. Every single time you repeat that in the early game, you basically gain roughly 1 minion, like 1 caster minion of gold into your pocket, a little bit less early on, but way more as the game goes on. And with all this in mind, you get so much more money and scale ahead so much faster. This is especially noticeable once you reach the mid game, because in the mid game you deal so much damage that the 9% of the First Strike A deals so much damage, and B provides you with so much extra gold. Oh yeah, and if you play against an assassin, please don't run after them into the fog of war. You will just die, and even if your team is flaming you, you can't just follow them. Rather focus on platings and stay alive. If they catch you once, just a single time, it's probably already enough to get you killed on cooldown once they see you again. And that's kinda it for today. Thank you all for watching, and if you liked the video, leave a like, comment to boost the algorithm, call me a pig if you really want to, you know the drill. Anyway, if you want to become a member and have cute emotes and flame me live chatting while I'm streaming, then become a member right now, a Scuttlecrab supporter, whatever supporter, doesn't matter. Join the giveaways, look at the videos that are announced that have codes in them for free skins, and come back for more. See ya.